Welcome to the Rich in Purpose Childhood Trauma Summit. Today we're here with Achara Tarfa. She's a co-founder of Global Trauma Institute and a trauma coach. Welcome, Achara.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
We're so happy to have you here. Achara, tell us a little bit of how you became passionate about becoming a trauma coach and helping people that have experienced the childhood trauma.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I think whenever I get asked this question, I think it's a funny answer. Part of me thinks it's funny because I didn't know that trauma was a thing, right? Like I knew that people talk to other people for help and that helped them. And so I remember one day just kind of going, I was actually in my master's for epidemiology at George Washington University. And it was right before COVID, something around that. And I was like, I want to help people. Okay. But I don't want to go back to school and do that. I'm in my master's program now. I'm not liking it. I don't want to do another master's. So I was like, what's this, trauma coaching? What is that? And I got in it to help other people with their trauma, not knowing that I had trauma. I know some people kind of go, I have trauma. And so that's how they get into this field. And I didn't. I was just like, I'm good. I'm going to get into this to help others because I've always been in sort of mentorships or community service on a macro scale. And when I got into learning about trauma, I was like, oh, wait, I have trauma. I didn't call it trauma. I called it life. That's what I called it. So that's how I stumbled into this world. And I'm so happy that I did. I'm so happy I learned about trauma and I get to do what I do.
Well, we're happy you stumbled onto it as well. But the one thing, Achara, that I want to make a point here is that many of us don't realize that we have childhood trauma because that's the way we grew up and all we wanted to do was be safe when we were children.
Yeah.
But what happens is we always realize that we end up in the same place, and that's not where we want to be. We try new things, but we end up in the same place because our subconscious mind kind of says, "Oh, we feel safe here, and we're going to take you there." If you continuously do that, how do you come to the point where you seek help from a trauma coach or someone that can help you when you because you keep kind of don't know it's trauma, but you just want to know why you keep ending up in the same places. How do you really realize that without coming into really realization of it, that maybe you have childhood trauma?
I think when you start to realize that this used to work before, this strategy for me, when I was in an argument with someone or when I had conflict with someone, at a certain point in my life, this strategy worked great. I was able to, whatever it is, maintain my cool, avoid the situation, whatever strategy was employed, it worked. And then as we get older, those strategies stop working as much. And that's when we kind of go, wait, there's something different here. I'm using this strategy. It's worked for me before in the past. And then now all of a sudden, those same strategies don't work anymore. And so we have to, then some other people develop other strategies. Some develop numbing strategies, addictive processing strategies, and, to numb us from whatever emotional experience that we're having or to forget about the situation. But that's what I would say is a big key is like what you're using is not working anymore. And so something needs to change.
Well, I think many, many times we go into the addictive part and we just kind of, right, go into a point where if I just have a couple drinks today, then I don't have to kind of continue these thoughts that are going through my head that I don't even know why they're there.
Right.
And
Yeah. Just avoid.
right. And then 20 years later, you're still doing the same thing and you wonder, why am I not moving forward? I want to ask you this, Achara. You have the trauma coaches and then you have the regular coaches. Why, if, for instance, if I can say, well, I'm just going to have a coach and not a trauma coach because you don't realize that you really got into a trauma at this particular point. Tell us the difference in how that particular coach is going to coach you and how a trauma coach is going to coach you.
Okay. Can I answer that using an example of my own personal life, how that
Sure.
played out?
Yeah.
So a few years ago, I decided, I want to lose some weight. I'm going to, I've been sedentary a lot. I've been sitting one-to-one virtual Zooms with people. I'm not moving my body as much. And I'm going to hire a fitness coach, right? And this fitness coach was a fitness life coach type person. So I was like, okay, and we're referred by a friend, and I thought this would be great. And I would show up and I would do the work. But on the days that were really, really hard for me to do the work, a trauma-informed coach would have caught that and been attuned to my experience and what I was going through versus a coach that's not a trauma coach. And it's more of, you can do this, toxic positivity. Just think of the person that you want to be, and a lot of shaming language actually, and that they weren't actually catching. And I was like, do you realize what you're saying to me is actually causing me to actually shut down more? It's not helping me. And that's because that particular person, that's how they survived in life, is to shut down the negative, to shut down and to avoid and just push through. And for trauma survivors, that push through, especially when we're in our places of healing, we're sort of put those, we're done surviving and we're looking to start to thrive, and we're looking for people to help us and live what that thriving feels like. And many of us don't know. And at that time, I didn't know. I just knew that there was misattunement, meaning what this person was saying to me wasn't motivating me to want to do what they needed me to do or what I even wanted to do. I just couldn't get there because I kept feeling shamed. I kept feeling that toxic positivity. Hey, you can do it. While I'm sitting there crying, telling me, you can just get up, just shake that off, just get up, shake that off. that's not going to help a trauma survivor. That's not meeting them where they're at.
Well, and I experienced the same thing in Chara. I was wondering why I would read books and not get to the same place that other people who make, well, I will say, that are emotionally stable. And then a coach the same way, right? It's like you said, it almost becomes shaming.
It
You
does.
don't you
Yeah.
don't you don't do what they say, and if you're emotionally stable, you can do it. But if you've been through trauma and you've just learned to be safe, you're not able to kind of just do all of those things.
No, you're not. And then also to add another layer to that, then you start to think, oh, it's my fault. Just like you did when you were young as a child. And then we're right back into our childhood trauma, right? It's my fault. This person is telling me, well, I've helped all these other people do this and they've had great results. Oh, so it's me, you know? And yeah, yeah.
You're exactly right. Well, the first one thing I want to ask you today, from the planned questions that we have, um, Chara, many adults don't realize they're still living with needs, unmet needs from their inner child. What are some signs someone is reacting from unmet needs from their inner child?
Yeah, I will give maybe two.
Okay.
So the first one that I can think of right now is if you're ever in a situation, and Jamie, I'm sure I found myself there, I'm sure you found yourself there, where we're in maybe a conversation or a situation that's going on. I don't care if it's returning something to the department store, or it's, pushing a button on an elevator and letting the person go in front of you. Whatever it is, it could be micro, it could be macro, right? It could be trivial, it could be traumatic. Anytime that there's this instantaneous feeling of you're going through your day and everything's good, and then all of a sudden something happens and you feel small, there's this shrinking away that starts to happen. And you kind of put everybody's needs ahead of your own needs. There's this like regression that you almost start to step into, and you feel all of a sudden like a child again. You're not that adult in the grocery store returning this item or whatever it is on the phone with the bill company dealing with the situation. It's this, wait a minute, oh no, I'm wrong. And there's this subtle shift that starts to happen where you shrink yourself. And that's a clear sign when you're not sort of stepping into your confidence, really saying what you want to say, and you begin to people please. In the trauma circles, we call that, fawning responses. That slow shrinkage, right? We can notice a body posture change of maybe our body starts to kind of shrink and we start to feel small. And that's an indicator that there's something there. The other one that I think of is when we have an emotional, what we call emotional flashbacks or emotional flooding. There'll be times where it's around the holiday season, right now. And there's times where we can feel this sort of overwhelming sense of sadness. And I'm just out here shopping for ornaments on my tree or wrapping paper. And all of a sudden I'm flooded with either anger, even anger. And I'm just buying wrapping paper. What's happening? So those are two signs at least. And it can just happen because emotions are from our body. They're not anything that we think and then we make ourselves feel that. It happens. It's an emotional response.
And that's the one thing I was going to follow up with you, but you ended up addressing it. Is sometimes these little things can happen, and I just feel really angry. Like it should be here anger, but it's here anger. And I often wonder why did first off I didn't realize it, but I just be angry. But now I'm like, Jamie, why are you getting so angry for this? Because it really doesn't have that much effect on your life at this particular moment, right?
Yeah.
And so you just kind of have to go through those things.
Right.
Then for people who grew up in survival mode, what does the inner child most often fear? And how does that fear show up in adult relationships, work, leadership roles?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we're kids, we don't have power often. We are at the mercy of our caregivers, be it an aunt, an uncle, a mom, a dad, a grandmother, a grandparent, even in school settings. We don't have the power. And so we are at the mercy and we're very vulnerable, right? We're in these vulnerable down power positions and choice is not in our corner. We're often having to do as we're told. And if we don't do as we're told, or if we don't quote unquote fit in, right, then we'll lose opportunities of play. We, we get punished in various ways. And so when it comes to experiencing childhood trauma, at least in that way, we'll do what we need to do to, we'll either mask and pretend like we're fine and nothing's wrong. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. I learned to hide my feelings. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm really, no, I'm fine. We learn to just stuff and stuff, right? And so that can show up very easily, just so that when we're young, right, we mask and we act like everything's fine and we do as we're told and we people please and we, appease the caregiver so that we can not get hit, so that we can eat dinner, so that we can not lose our play privileges, we can still see our friends, we don't have to go to bed early, whatever it is, so we can avoid those punishments. We will suppress our needs and act like we're okay. That's the biggest thing that I can think of, because we want to still stay in relationship and we don't want to be abandoned or left alone. And so when we're in an adult relationship, whether it's work, whether it's intimate partner, whether it's even in our friendships, we can often still carry on those behaviors. I'm fine. I learned to put my needs aside. We'll eventually get to my needs. My needs will come later. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Meanwhile, all of that, whether it's anger that we're not releasing, sadness, whatever it is, disgust, whatever that is that we're storing, that's where instead of expressing it out, it's being stored on the inside and it's causing inflammation in our bodies and it's doing all kinds of things. And so that's the biggest thing that I can answer, that like how I can answer that question, because we often learn to suppress our needs because we're not in a power position. We have to. And then when we're adults, we still learn that trait and we carry that forward. And so we suppress our needs. And then for relationships, and I'll just wrap up by saying this, think about how that shows up in relationships. We're not honest because we're not being honest with ourselves. And if we're not being honest with ourselves, then we're not going to be honest with our partner. And then later on, the partner finds out that we weren't honest. Oh, well, now you're a liar. And then now there's this shame, and it's just this vicious cycle that can continue on and on.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of things we get into these vicious cycles because we don't know what else to do. So I'm going to ask you a little question that I could maybe use coaching on at this particular minute, because
Okay.
I think other people can, let's say it happens to them as well. But,
Okay.
so many of us we always work hard and we try to be these overachievers. And then we're at work and we're asked, what do you think about this? Or you know that your manager is about ready to do something, and with all the experience that you have and knowledge that you have, you think, I know that this is a better idea. But then you give it to your manager and they say, oh, well, I don't really think it's a better idea. Even though sometimes they don't even give you the reason why they don't think it's a good idea. It's just, no, I don't think it's a good idea. I know for me, I have my own business now, so if I like my idea, I just go with it. But I would just get so angry, but I would keep it inside, right? And I would say, okay, fine. But then through the day, I would ruminate over that decision that they didn't really even consider what I was going to do, what I thought was a good idea. How do we as trauma survivors deal with that anger that for me it just is little issues of anger that just continuously pop up in my life? How do we address that?
Yeah, I think that's one. If your boss didn't listen to you, I'm noticing a part of me that just wants to just go, I'm so sorry that happened. That's not cool and it doesn't feel fair and nobody likes to not be listened to. So having someone validate your experience is a good place to start. right? Like having someone to talk to say, hey, this is what happened and it really made me mad. And yeah, so just having someone hear you and validate can go a really long way, right? But there's a difference between validating and ruminating. So I can validate, but we're not going to just stay here, right? We're going to maybe work through some of the things that actually occurred. And what comes to my mind is safety. Just like when we're young, we're in the down power position. We don't have a lot of power in the family system. um, we don't have a lot of safety, right? Food, shelter, all of that. And when we're adults, if we're experiencing places where we're devalued, right? We feel dismissed. We feel like our efforts are not appreciated. How can we create a container of safety to then take what we're experiencing and how our emotions are showing up in that? Because it's obviously you wouldn't express that to your boss, right? I'm angry and how, because they're already being dismissive. That's not a safe environment for you to process what's going on. So how do I then find or create a safe environment where then I can just kind of sit with what I'm feeling, where I can be validated, where someone can really attune and co-regulate. There's a term that we use. It's called co-regulation. So it's really lending my energy of compassion and consideration and connection and understanding to you, to where we're in the same sort of space and really holding space for that anger. Maybe even, especially with anger, I work with a lot of women who are going through high conflict custody divorce from narcissists. They have a lot of repressed anger. And for I recommend for them, every one of them, I recommend they go to a rage room. Have you heard of these, Jamie?
No, I haven't.
Oh, they're fabulous. These are places that are safe containers for us to express what our body is holding. And so we can go to these places. You can rent objects. It's great because you're part of recycling. So these, you're paying a bit of money. You can go with a group of friends and just you get objects and then you destroy the objects. And the people then, once you're done, they come and clean up the mess for you. Like it is a safe place to express an emotion like anger, where you're not shamed, where it's welcome, and your body can complete that cycle. Because if you're holding the emotion of anger, it's like a wave that doesn't ever get to crest. And so, what does it look like to let that wave crest and to let my body release that anger, right? So that I'm not sort of here all the time and I can let that go. And then I can decide what I want to do with it, right? But the simple fact that you have awareness of it, that's the first step. That's huge. That's huge. Have awareness of it and that was wrong.
Yeah, well, I think, the one thing, and it's kind of, it's really been a theme of this summit as well, is awareness. Are you aware of the things that are happening to you that are really from your childhood, and you're not aware of it? You just think, so many times what we hear people say, oh, that's just me. That's just the way I do
It's
things.
just that's just my personality. That's just
Yeah.
how I am.
And even though, and internally, it's frustrating you as well.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that person, but then you are that. You say that you are that person because, in a sense, Charles, you don't get help. And if you think that that's just the way you are, then that's the way you're always going to be. But the one thing that I really want to push as far as the summit goes and other things is that many of these things you don't like about yourself can be healed if you'll get to with a coach like yourself that is not going to judge you, that's not going to give up on you, and you realize that, wow, now I don't feel that way anymore. Now I can like at least regulate the amount of anger that I have and not ruminate over it throughout the day. And that's what really kind of gets you right, is you start ruminating and people say, oh, what's wrong, Jamie? I just, it was a little decision that didn't go my way, and now I'm upset for the whole day.
Mhm. Yeah. And just to touch, just to expand upon that, Jamie, even saying like, that's me, that's how I am, that's how I've always been. Can we ask if that's even true? That may not even be true. That may be the masked you, though you had to be because you were in survival mode. But is that really you, or is that what people have told you that that's you? Oh, Achara's always like that. She's that way. That's her personality. Is that true? Is that a projection somebody has placed upon me? Is that projection something that I grabbed onto to fit in and be in connection with someone? And then now I've developed that as part of my identity or personality? Really, as we sit here and we do work with our inner child, we begin to learn like really who we left behind and who we can now reconcile with and connect to and really find out who we really are.
Right. I mean, and and I think a lot of times it is things that people have put on you, right? Oh, he's just overly sensitive. Oh, he just
Right.
little things sometimes can get him upset,
Yeah.
especially in areas of, of work and that type of thing. So you're right. That's one thing I really didn't think about that so much is because, you've just been labeled that. So if you're labeled that, you live up to that expectation
Sure.
because we're right, we're people pleasers. So if that's who
Yep.
we are, then when you say
Absolutely.
something, I'm just going to get upset or I'm going to cry or I'm going to storm away or something because that's what people have. You think you're kind of people, you become a people pleaser. So okay, that's what they expect of me. So that's who I'll be.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good one. This is another question. What does healthy relationships look like in real life, especially for people who haven't really experienced emotional attunement or consistent caregiving when they were growing up. And
Oh,
that's the one thing, Chara, that sometimes we and I think it's a great deal, and I'll let you want to answer this question, but I just want to add this before it is that many times we don't know that we're like stepping outside of the normal box of society, right? Because in our childhood, if we did this, we got a good result. Everybody stayed calm. Maybe there I didn't get instructed and feel small about myself, or I didn't look to be the strong one every single time. So how do people just really even know what is normal? And one of my little sayings before I started getting into this is, if I don't know I'm crazy, then how do I become the person that people don't think is crazy? So
yeah.
because I think I don't know why they think I'm crazy because that's the way it's always been done in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. That question reminds me of a conversation that I had with my husband because I've been in really awful relationships, relationships that were seeking uh the repair and restoration that I couldn't get from my folks through relationship, and I went through some really awful ones and never found that restoration, right? But I'm in a wonderful marriage now. Not to say that we don't have our challenges, because we do, because we're different people. But I remember a conversation we had, and I was used to not arguing with people because arguing meant that you would get in trouble, that that person would leave you. And I was in a relationship where that person left you for days and just completely ghosted, and you'd never know. And that's really terrifying, right? To just kind of not know what the person is going to do, what they may do to you, whatever. Because my situation was quite extreme before. And I just remember when he and I would have discussions or arguments or not see eye to eye, I would I would have this reaction like, we have to resolve it now. Because he's the kind of person who needs a space, to process and so forth. And I was very much, we have to solve it now. We have to solve it now so he doesn't leave. So he doesn't leave. We've got it. And I would just suffocate him. I would not give him his space. I would not respect what he was asking. And I would say, no, 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 we can fix it now. Let's fix it now. Just tell me and we'll fix it. We'll fix it. We'll fix it. I'll either change my behavior, tell me, tell me, tell me. And that caused a lot of stress and strain on the relationship, on the marriage. And I remember one of the first moments where I realized we had broke that pattern. And he had said, I had said, I'm noticing, because there was, I forget what had happened. There was some decision that he had made and didn't consult me or talk to me about. And erasure is a big part of my trauma from very early on in childhood. So this is another way where that early childhood shows up, right? So him not talking to me about a situation that was probably quite minor, my reaction to it was extreme frustration and anger. And I sort of bit my tongue because I went the opposite direction, right? Instead of saying, we need to talk about it, we need to talk about it, I just kind of bit my tongue and didn't say anything. Because again, erasure is a big part. So not including me in something felt like erasure to me. And I found out, he was like, what's going on? He noticed that I had bit my tongue. And I had said, nothing, I'm good. I'll just figure it out. And he said, no, really, what's going on? And I said, I'm just noticing I'm really frustrated. I'm really frustrated by your actions, and I'm kind of frustrated by what a conversation, how this is going. And then his response, because before, he has his own trauma, right? So before, he would get mad and he would shut down and he would disengage. And this time he said, oh, you're frustrated. He goes, that's okay. I can hold your frustration. We're just talking here. And I remember where I was. I remember what I was doing. I remember where he was. And it was that moment I just took a photograph in my mind of, oh, this is different now. And I said, you're right. Yeah, it is. Just thanks for holding my frustration. And he's like, we're just talking. Let's continue. Let's finish. And now he became the one. Let's work through this and let's talk more. And it's been that way ever since. We sit down and we have conversations when we are on opposite sides.
Well, and that's wonderful, I think, because so many times, especially, you know, I know for me, and I always say if I act that way, there's probably a few other people do, but it's the shutdown part. You you get into this, into a situation where, like you guys do now, you talk it out and you see, okay, we can both come to an agreement that this is a good thing. But when you shut down, and I say that that's one of the characteristics or traits of me that I'd like to overcome, because that is really a mask, right? I'm not going to shut down. I'm going to shut down because I don't know what's going to happen, right? If we keep going in this talk, I don't know what's going to happen. So then your subconscious mind goes, well, I don't know if you're going to be safe. So just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. How do we really, and sometimes I think it's just courage and to understand that maybe, or probably, right, not maybe, but probably, this person is not going to abandon you like you experienced in your childhood. It's just going to be, oh, well, what about this and what about this? So you end up making different choices. But how do you get the courage, if you have abandonment issues, to say, all right, I'm going to take this first step by saying, okay, what about this idea? And then you see, right? Because at the end of the day, Achara, we can't change unless we experience good things, right? So tell us how we can take that and get the courage, and then say, oh well, that was a good thing. And like you guys did do now, you try and you have a good relationship and you do it on a normal basis.
Say normal, but there's still a pause where I still have to make that choice to not shut down. I think he still has to make that choice. So I think that you saying choice is really important. What's coming up for me as you ask this and as you're talking is recognizing shame in the relationship, recognizing shame in my own system, right? In my own body and how shame shows up. Shame is so pervasive. And when we talk about shame in the simplest terms, it's where my badness is witnessed by other people. So what I think is not good about me, somebody else is seeing, right? And so in that situation, I was being an angry wife, right? So that's my bad. I don't want to be labeled as an angry wife. I also have my own, call them hangups or beliefs, because we are in an intercultural relationship. So there's a part of me that's often like, oh, he married that American. My husband's not American. Well, he's American now, but he's naturalized. But there's that part of me that's like, oh, he could have married someone that's more like his culture and what he grew up. And so, that's, oh, don't want to be that loudmouth American, you know? And so that's the shame that I have to just kind of catch. That's, oh, there's shame here. Okay. And then make that choice to go, okay, I'm feeling a bit of shame. Let me just recognize what's happening in my body right now, how shame shows up for me, because shame shows up for everybody different. Sometimes there's a feeling in my stomach. Sometimes there's a really sort of tightness or pressure in my chest. However it shows up for a person, being able to have awareness, oh, that's shame. There's a choice here. I'm no longer that. I have power now, right? I have power now. And so because of that, I can make that choice. But I think for me, it's one of the very first things is when I recognize that shame is present in the situation, and then I get to choose differently because I'm no longer a child.
And all of those stuff that you say, HR, is so good because most of the time we don't know why we're reacting a certain. So that's why when we have summits like this and we're talking with coaches, we're thinking, oh yeah, I can act in a different way, or this is this I don't really recognize that maybe I had childhood trauma, but the more I hear about these types of things, I realize that maybe I did have some trauma in my childhood, and maybe these particular things keep showing up because of what happened in my life. The one thing is we don't realize sometimes that we get habits, right? And these habits that are brought to us as we're children, again, sometimes they're not really the best way to act, and we need to change. But you need to be aware that this is you're reacting this way because of something that's happened to you in the past, and you're living in the past.
Especially if you were somebody who didn't have anywhere to go. So if you have that reaction, maybe you say that, maybe you expressed that you were upset at your parent, and then they shamed you for it, and then you got punished for it. You didn't have a place to go. As an adult, where do we go? We have no, like, I don't, all I know is to shut down. All I know is to shut down because I didn't have a safe space to go to. And so we can create those spaces of safety where we can start to begin to unravel that.
And that's important, to create those spaces of safety. And sometimes, I mean, it almost has, it not always has to, that's not a good word maybe, but it comes from people who are therapists and who are coaches, because we've attracted our friends and the people that we're around because of the person that we are.
Yeah.
Well, we want to become this person that we're not, that we feel that's going to be a healed person. And so, you know, you probably attracted people that are just going to say that, they could be angry, they could uh, shame you again with your friends and stuff like that. So I just feel it's just important to reach out to people who are not going to shame you, are not going to be that person that kind of makes you relive your childhood, right? And then all of a sudden you think, well, I did this and that happened, so it really comes into play. But I really want to kind of start to ask you this particular question, is that so many of us just have never, we never experienced love when we were growing up. It was always, if I do this, then they'll be nice to me. If I do this, they'll be nice to me. And, like for me, I'll just tell you one of the experiences when everybody, when they were in the first grade, they're 6 years old, they get dropped off and their parents leave. My mom was going to get going, and oh my gosh, people had to hold me down. I was afraid that she was leaving me in this place and just not going to come back, or it's going to be a long time before you come back. I've never seen anybody act like that before, but it's just you just get into those things because I wasn't really, I didn't, I probably wasn't loved, or I would think, oh, she's going to come back. But how do we just accept love for ourselves and start loving ourselves? Because at the end of the day, loving yourself is really the biggest quality that we can learn. So how do we go through that in the environment that we're currently in?
I would go back to finding those containers of safety, whether it's through a friend, whether it's finding a coach that can, point out to you and validate you and see these qualities in you that you don't see in yourself, that you can then begin to start to see in yourself. What we're talking about here is the destruction of this intrapersonal bridge, this connection that we have to ourselves. And that often gets destroyed in relationships, in interpersonal relationships, that interpersonal bridge. And so if we can repair this interpersonal bridge, meaning if I know Jamie thinks I'm amazing, and I don't think Jamie is crazy as Jamie, as you said earlier, maybe there's some, Jamie thinks I'm really good at math. Maybe I actually am smart with numbers. And I was told all my life that I don't know how to manage money. Maybe, and so really being with someone who is authentically holding that space for you to help you start to see and be a mirror, right? Like we know about mirror neurons. If you smile at me, I'm going to smile back. If you're kind of mad at me, you feel that energy, right? So how can I then surround myself with people that don't think that I'm just fabulous all the time, although I will not deny that, but how do I surround myself with people who show me really authentically who I am, and hold me in truth and hold me in love and can love me so that I can start to repair that and begin to love myself again. Until I was 15, I met my best friend when I was 15 years old. And she really taught me that I'm not a weirdo. My best friend really taught me that I was somebody worthy of love. And she's my best friend to this day. We've been best friends for decades, multiple decades. Let's just put it that way. But to this day, and I don't think that if I didn't have her in my life, I don't know where I would have been, like how the trajectory would have. I had someone in my life that taught me that I was worthy of love as a teen. Because before then, I didn't think that I was worth much at all. So, yeah, I think that that's where we start, and I will also say that as a woman in the United States of America, as a woman who grew up in a home from, a home where I was parentified, I had to be responsible for a lot of things. English was a second language in my home. And so I had to like take on some things that as a youth, typically you wouldn't have taken on, but a lot of American families are experiencing that now. So anybody who's listening, I will say, if you're a woman who had to do that for your household, and then now that's just sort of what you're used to. You're used to taking care of everybody else around you because you know what it's like to not have somebody take care of you. And so you make sure that no one ever feels the way that you've ever felt, which is not to be taken care of and not to be loved. And so you spend all your time loving on other people and you don't slow down and realize, oh, I'm still not getting love. I'm still not getting love. And so, how do we then slow down and start to love ourselves? Right? And start to love ourselves and take care of ourselves too, because we matter too. Yes, my kids matter, my husband matters, my colleagues matter. Yes, and I matter too. I do.
And the one thing I was going to throw in here a little bit is that when you when you give someone a compliment, don't just say, "Oh, you're great," because as childhood trauma, people were like, "What about what? How is this different?" But you're great in this particular thing.
Yeah.
And that way, you can accept it, and you can think, "Oh, well, I even think so. I even think I do good in that particular area. Now, here's another person that thinks I do good in that particular area." So you can kind of build on that. So
Yeah.
when we just say, "Oh, yeah, good job," about what? What was good
Yeah.
about it, right?
Yeah. Be specific. That's why I was like, you're really good at math. Jamie thinks I'm really good at math.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's really important to be specific.
yeah,
Really
that's
important to be specific.
when you said that math, I'm like, I'm going to say that. No. But I have this question for you also, Charles, that if someone feels scared, resistant, or overwhelmed by the idea of the inner child work, what's one simple first step they can take to begin gently reconnecting with their inner child?
Oh, Jamie, that's a really, really great question. Um, I think before we can get to awareness, like you and I have been talking about, like, oh, when we're aware, I think we have to sort of be in a state of curiosity. Like, be curious. Like, is this possibly what I'm experiencing? Like, be open-minded to the possibility that childhood trauma may exist in your life. That may be something that you went through. Maybe you do have an inner child, but how can we first be curious about that? What does being curious look like for each individual? Yeah.
Well, I think that, you know, if we want to live a life, then we've had our inner childhood where those needs weren't met. And so we end up just thinking that, how many times do you hear people, and probably when you're coaching, right? It's like, oh, I could never do that. I could never do that. And we know, in the Napoleon Hill Institute, that, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. So if you realize that you can really live any life that you want, and the one thing I think, Achara, is that we all have dreams, right? We all, no matter what our childhood looks like, right? We have this dream of maybe having a great family that we've never experienced before, or going on a vacation with a family that you've never experienced before, and take those first steps, right? To say, hey, this year, right? You have your family, or you have a new girlfriend or new wife or whatever. I'm going to take a vacation because I've never experienced a family vacation before, and just little steps to say, oh, I'm becoming more of a well-rounded person than I was before. And or I'm really something, maybe not the word well-rounded is not the right. I'm becoming this person that I kind of, now that I'm adult, dreaming about being, because sometimes, and for me, I always thought that life was the same until I read a Zig Ziglar "See You at the Top" book and realized, wow, this is the life that's possible. And
Right.
I became very passionate about learning what kind of life was possible for me. And now I just want everyone in this world, if we can, to not have to experience some of the things that I've had to experience, even as an adult, even as in my adult life, of having things that I really deserve to have, but I never thought that I deserved to have. And if you can just create your life through love and being able to say, I deserve that. And I know that I have the intelligence to do that, because, how many times when we were a kid, oh, you're stupid, right? Don't try that. So you don't try anything, you think you're stupid, and all of a sudden you become 65 years old, right? And you're like, why I'm not living the life I that I think that I can live. And now you have a kind of a template, right? Of whether when and a coach can help you do that. But when you start finding out that there is a life over here that you can do, that you can love, and you start going towards it, then you become a better person. And I think you really start seeking healing. right? Because this look what happened with this first step of healing. Now let's move to a second step of healing. And I think that, if you'll just take those little steps, you're going to end up, because life is a journey, right? No matter how emotionally stable you are, right? There are going to be things that happen in your life that you think, you know, it's okay. But if you were loved, it's a different response than if you weren't loved. So I think that, just grow and find someone that's going to love you. I'm so happy you found a husband that loves you and you guys are talking and
On
you're
me.
a great family. So, that's just great. Um, but Chara, we're going to wrap up here. What is some, I guess, the one thing or just some thoughts about the inner child that you see within your clients and then the people that you help that just seem to stand out, or or how do you take that first step, or just talk a little bit, wrap up about your inner child thoughts that maybe we didn't discuss here today.
Well, I guess what I want to leave everyone with is maybe like a first step would be to play. So as kids, those of us that are trauma survivors, some of us don't even have childhood memories, or the ones that we do have aren't so great. And play is a natural occurrence in childhood, or at least it should be, right? And so many of us, as we become adults, we don't know how to have fun. We don't play. We don't get to be in that space of connection and joy. And so I would suggest to think of something that you've always wanted to do and do it. Think of something that you find is going to be really fun and go and have fun. Go and have fun. Now, I'm not saying risky, adventurous, like, climbing a rock without an attachment. I'm losing the word for that, but something that you can do that doesn't cost any money or very little money, and maybe you can do with someone else, a friend, and go have fun. See what that starts to feel like in your body, in your system, and then hold on to that and do it more. And you'll start to see, wait, oh, this feels really good. I didn't have this all my life. I want more of this. And that is going to be a resource for you as you do the deep work and get to know your inner child and meet those wounds that inner child's carrying. Because it's not the inner child. We don't want to push away our inner child, right? We don't want to say, oh, get over it. I'm this age, suck it up. That's not what we want to do. We want to recognize that it's not the inner child. It's the wounds that inner child is carrying. And when we can engage in play and resource ourselves, then we can really create those containers of safety and go in to do that deeper work. So I hope that answers that question.
It did, and what I was going to say, the one thing you might realize that you had childhood trauma is you never had fun when you were a kid,
That's
right?
right.
We kind of, we kind of, I kind of, when you said that, I'm like, oh, okay, that relates because I really didn't have fun when I was
maybe you had childhood trauma.
Well, Achara, thank you so much. I'm I'm sure that our audience has learned a lot, as I've learned a lot listening to you. Achara, we're going to put it on the screen at the end, but tell us, how can people get a hold of you if they say, "Oh, I really connected with Achara today. Let me reach out to her, and maybe that's my first step of healing."
Yeah, so they can visit my website, www.atratarfa.com. Oh, and when they get there, they can book a compassion chat. I do 15-minute free consultations just to get to know a person and see if I'm a great fit for them or they're a great client for me. I also have a newsletter that I put out. I try to do it bi-monthly. So you get something every week so you can stay in touch in the offerings. You can also find me at the Global Trauma Institute. And one thing we didn't talk about a lot is I am a level 3 trained IFS practitioner. And so on Instagram, you'll find content about me and using parts language. And in IFS world and internal family systems, we talk about our inner child as our exiles. And so learn a bit more about that at ifs.atra on Instagram. So those are some ways that people can connect and reach out to me.
All right, great. Well, the one thing about social media in this world, you're always connected to something, so they'll be able to find you for sure.
Yes.
But Achara, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure having you on the Transform Childhood Trauma Summit, and we look forward to staying connected and growing with you as well.
Thank you.ขอบคุณมากค่ะ. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
All right.